The morning sun cast long shadows across the corridors of Buckingham Palace, as King Charles prepared for what would become one of the most controversial decisions of his reign. The 75-year-old monarch sat in his private study, surrounded by centuries of royal portraits that seemed to watch his every move. On his mahogany desk lay a single document that would soon send shockwaves through the British royal family and beyond. Charles had been contemplating this decision for months, ever since Catherine, Princess of Wales, had shown remarkable grace during her recent health challenges. The way she had handled her cancer diagnosis and treatment while maintaining her royal duties had deeply impressed him. Her strength reminded him of his late mother, Queen Elizabeth II, and he felt compelled to recognize her extraordinary service to the crown. The document before him outlined his intention to bestow upon Catherine the Order of the Garter, the most prestigious honor in the British system of chivalry. This ancient order, founded by King Edward III in 1348, was traditionally reserved for the most distinguished members of society. What made this decision particularly significant was that Catherine would be receiving this honor ahead of Queen Camilla, who had been waiting for this recognition since becoming queen consort. As Charles reviewed the paperwork one final time, his private secretary knocked softly on the door. The king had specifically requested that this matter be handled with utmost discretion until the official announcement. He understood the delicate nature of his decision and the potential consequences it might have within his own family. However, his conviction remained unwavering. Catherine had proven herself time and again, and her dedication to charitable causes, her role as a mother, and her unwavering support of the monarchy deserved recognition. The Princess of Wales had no knowledge of the king's plans. She was at Adelaide Cottage in Windsor, helping her children prepare for school. Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis were enjoying their breakfast while Catherine reviewed their schedules for the day. The normalcy of the morning routine provided a stark contrast to the royal drama that was about to unfold. Meanwhile, Queen Camilla was at Clarence House, preparing for a busy day of royal engagements. She had been looking forward to a charity luncheon where she would be speaking about literacy programs, one of her passionate causes. Camilla had worked tirelessly to build her reputation and gain public acceptance since marrying Charles. Every royal duty she performed was carefully calculated to enhance her standing and prove her worthiness of the crown she now wore. The queen consort had long anticipated receiving the Order of the Garter. It seemed like a natural progression in her royal journey, especially given her position as Charles's wife and queen. She had mentioned it to close friends on several occasions, expressing her hope that the honor would come sooner rather than later. The recognition would symbolize her full acceptance into the royal fold and validate her years of service. Back at Buckingham Palace, Charles made his final decision. He signed the document with his distinctive flourish and immediately called for his senior staff. The announcement would need to be carefully orchestrated to minimize backlash while highlighting Catherine's achievements. The king's communications team was known for their expertise in managing royal news, but this particular announcement would test their skills like never before. The irony of the situation was not lost on Charles. He had spent years trying to rehabilitate Camilla's image and integrate her fully into the royal family. Now his decision to honor Catherine first would inevitably be seen as a slight against his own wife. Yet Charles believed that merit should triumph over protocol, and Catherine's contributions to the monarchy were undeniable. Catherine's popularity with the British public had soared over the years. Her natural warmth, her dedication to early childhood development, mental health awareness, and her role as a hands-on mother had endeared her to millions. She represented a modern approach to royalty, while maintaining the dignity and grace expected of a future queen. Her recent health battle had only increased public sympathy and admiration for her courage and resilience. The king's decision was also influenced by strategic considerations. Catherine represented the future of the monarchy, and investing in her public image would benefit the institution long-term. At 42, she had many years of service ahead of her, while Camilla, at 77, was naturally approaching the later stages of her royal career. As the palace machinery began to move into action, Charles reflected on the potential consequences of his choice. He knew Camilla would be hurt and likely angry, Their relationship, built on decades of love and mutual support, would face its greatest test. However, he also believed that Camilla, with her practical nature and understanding of royal duty, would eventually accept his reasoning. The king's staff began coordinating with Catherine's team at Kensington Palace to arrange a private meeting before the public announcement. They needed to ensure that the Princess of Wales was fully prepared for the media attention and public reaction that would follow. The timing of the announcement was crucial, as it needed to coincide with Catherine's schedule and avoid conflicting with other major royal events. Charles also instructed his private secretary to arrange a personal meeting with Camilla before the news became public. He owed her the courtesy of explaining his decision face to face. Despite knowing it would be one of the most difficult conversations of their marriage, the king understood that this decision would create ripples throughout the royal household and potentially strain relationships that had taken years to build. As the day progressed, the wheels of royal protocol began turning. Invitations for the investiture ceremony were being prepared, media statements were being drafted, and security arrangements were being coordinated. The Order of the Garter ceremony, traditionally held at Windsor Castle, would need to accommodate the significant public and media interest that this particular honor would generate. The king spent the remainder of the morning in meetings with his senior advisors, discussing the best approach for managing the announcement and its aftermath. They reviewed potential questions from the media, prepared talking points for royal correspondence, and considered the timing of other royal announcements to ensure Catherine's honor received appropriate attention without overshadowing other important royal business. By afternoon, the palace was buzzing with quiet activity as staff members who were privy to the decision worked to implement the king's wishes. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation and nervous energy, as everyone understood they were participating in a moment that would reshape royal dynamics and public perception for years to come. The following morning brought an unexpected phone call to Adelaide Cottage that would change everything for Catherine. She was in her kitchen, still in her morning robe, when her private secretary called with an urgent message from the king. Charles requested a private audience with her at Windsor Castle that afternoon, and the tone suggested it was a matter of significant importance. Catherine felt a flutter of nervousness as she hung up the phone. Royal summons were never casual affairs, and the short notice made her wonder if something was wrong. Her mind raced through possibilities. Had she made some protocol error? Was there a family crisis? She quickly called her husband, Prince William, who was at his royal duties, but he seemed equally puzzled by the sudden request. After arranging childcare for George, Charlotte, and Louis, Catherine selected a conservative navy dress and pearls for the meeting. She had learned over the years that royal meetings required careful consideration of appearance, as every detail would be analyzed and interpreted by those present. The drive to Windsor Castle felt longer than usual, with Catherine's thoughts swirling about what the king might want to discuss. At Clarence House, Queen Camilla was completely unaware of the brewing storm. She had enjoyed a successful morning engagement at a local school, reading stories to young children as part of her literacy campaign. The genuine smiles and laughter of the children had energized her, and she returned home feeling particularly pleased with how the visit had gone. She was looking forward to a quiet afternoon before her evening engagement at the opera. Camilla's lady-in-waiting mentioned that the king had called requesting her presence at Windsor Castle for tea time. This wasn't unusual, as Charles often enjoyed spending relaxed afternoons with his wife when their schedules permitted. Camilla assumed it would be a pleasant break from their busy routines, perhaps an opportunity to catch up on family matters or discuss upcoming royal tours. Meanwhile, at Windsor Castle, King Charles paced nervously in the oak drawing room. The ornate chamber, with its rich tapestries and portraits of previous monarchs, seemed to amplify the weight of what he was about to do. He had spent sleepless hours the previous night rehearsing how he would explain his decision to both women, knowing that his words would need to be chosen very carefully. Catherine arrived first, escorted through the castle's grand corridors by a footman. She had visited Windsor countless times, but today the familiar surroundings felt charged with anticipation. When she entered the drawing room, Charles rose from his chair with a warm smile that helped ease some of her anxiety. He gestured for her to sit in the chair opposite his, and a servant immediately appeared with tea service. The king began with pleasantries, asking about the children and her recent engagements. Catherine responded politely, but she could sense there was something more significant behind this meeting. Charles seemed more formal than usual, despite his attempts at casual conversation. When the servants had left and they were alone, the king's demeanor shifted to something more serious and purposeful. Charles cleared his throat and began to speak about Catherine's service to the crown. He praised her dedication during difficult times, her natural way with people, and her commitment to causes that truly mattered to the British people. Catherine listened politely, though she was becoming increasingly puzzled about why the king felt the need to deliver what sounded like a formal evaluation of her royal duties. Then Charles delivered the news that would change everything. He informed Catherine that he intended to bestow upon her the Order of the Garter, making her a lady companion of the most noble order in the land. Catherine's teacup rattled slightly in its saucer as she processed this information. She knew enough about royal protocol to understand the significance of this honor and the fact that it would make her the youngest person to receive it in modern times. Catherine's initial reaction was one of genuine surprise and humility. She stammered her thanks while trying to comprehend the magnitude of what the king was telling her. The Order of the Garter was not just another royal honor. It was a symbol of the highest recognition possible, traditionally reserved for those who had served the crown with exceptional distinction over many years. Charles explained his reasoning carefully, emphasizing Catherine's grace under pressure during her health challenges and her growing importance to the future of the monarchy. He spoke about her natural connection with people and her ability to modernize royal traditions while maintaining their essential dignity. The king was clearly passionate about his decision, but Catherine could also detect an underlying tension in his voice. As the conversation continued, Catherine began to realize the potential implications of this honor. She was aware that Queen Camilla had not yet received the Order of the Garter, and she could imagine how this announcement might be perceived. Catherine had always been careful to maintain respectful relationships within the royal family, and the thought of inadvertently causing offense made her uncomfortable. She expressed her concerns to the king, suggesting that perhaps Queen Camilla should receive the honor first, given her position and years of service. Charles appreciated Catherine's thoughtfulness but explained that he had made his decision based on merit and timing. He assured her that he would handle any family sensitivities, and that she should focus on preparing for the ceremony and the public attention that would follow. The king also shared some practical details about the investiture ceremony, which would take place at St. George's Chapel at Windsor Castle. The ancient ritual would be conducted according to traditions dating back centuries, and Catherine would be required to wear the ceremonial robes and insignia of the order. Charles explained that his communications team would work with her staff to manage the announcement and prepare for media coverage. As their meeting drew to a close, Catherine felt a mixture of honor and apprehension. She was genuinely grateful for the king's recognition and understood the significance of his gesture. However, she also knew that royal honors often came with complications, and she could sense that this particular decision might create tensions within the family that would be difficult to navigate. Charles asked Catherine to keep the news confidential until the official announcement, which would be made within the next few days. He wanted to personally inform Queen Camilla before the news became public, and he needed time to coordinate with the palace communications team. Catherine agreed, though she wondered how she would manage to keep such momentous news from William and the children. After Catherine departed, Charles remained in the drawing room, steeling himself for the even more difficult conversation that lay ahead. He knew that telling Camilla about his decision would test their relationship in ways he hoped to avoid, but he remained convinced that he was making the right choice for the monarchy's future. The afternoon sun was beginning to fade as he prepared for what might be one of the most challenging conversations of his marriage. Queen Camilla arrived at Windsor Castle in high spirits, wearing a cheerful yellow ensemble that reflected her positive mood after the successful school visit. She had brought along some photographs from the morning's event to share with Charles, knowing how much he enjoyed hearing about her engagements with children. The Queen Consort was particularly pleased with how naturally the children had responded to her, and she was eager to discuss plans for expanding the literacy program. A footman escorted Camilla through the familiar corridors to the oak drawing room, where she expected to find Charles relaxing with his afternoon tea. However, when she entered the room, she immediately sensed that something was different. Her husband's posture was more rigid than usual, and there was a tension in his expression that she had learned to recognize over their many years together. Charles rose to greet his wife with their customary kiss on both cheeks, but Camilla could feel a stiffness in his embrace. She settled into the chair that Catherine had vacated just an hour earlier, accepting a fresh cup of tea while studying her husband's face. After 35 years of knowing Charles, she could read his moods better than anyone, and today something was clearly troubling him. The king began with polite inquiries about Camilla's morning engagement, listening as she enthusiastically described the children's reactions to her storytelling. However, Camilla could tell that his attention wasn't fully focused on her words. There was a distracted quality to his responses that made her increasingly concerned. When she finished describing her morning, an awkward silence settled over the room. Charles cleared his throat in the way he always did when preparing to discuss something difficult. Camilla had heard that sound countless times over the years, before he told her about his mother's declining health, before difficult conversations about royal duties, and before other moments that would change their lives. She set down her teacup and gave him her full attention, bracing herself for whatever news was coming. The king began by speaking about the importance of recognizing exceptional service to the crown. He talked about the need to honor those who had shown remarkable dedication and grace under pressure. Camilla listened politely, though she was becoming increasingly puzzled about where this conversation was heading. Charles seemed to be building up to something significant, but his approach was more circuitous than usual. Then Charles delivered the news that would shatter Camilla's afternoon tranquility. He informed her that he had decided to award the Order of the Garter to Catherine, Princess of Wales. The words hung in the air between them like a physical presence, and Camilla felt as though time had suddenly stopped. She stared at her husband, trying to process what she had just heard. Camilla's first reaction was stunned silence. She had been expecting this honor for herself, and the idea that Catherine would receive it first had never occurred to her. The queen consort had worked tirelessly to prove herself worthy of such recognition, enduring years of public scrutiny and criticism, while supporting Charles through his journey to the throne. The Order of the Garter represented more than just an honor. It was validation of her place in the royal hierarchy. As the initial shock wore off, Camilla felt a surge of hurt and anger that she struggled to contain. She had sacrificed so much for her role as queen consort, including relationships with her own children and grandchildren, who sometimes felt overshadowed by her royal duties. She had endured decades of negative press coverage, comparisons to Diana, and public skepticism about her worthiness to be Charles's wife and eventual queen. Charles attempted to explain his reasoning, emphasizing Catherine's recent health challenges and her growing importance to the monarchy's future. He spoke about the need to invest in the next generation of royals and Catherine's exceptional grace under pressure. However, his words only seemed to deepen Camilla's sense of betrayal. She felt as though her own years of service were being dismissed, in favor of someone who had been part of the royal family for less than half the time she had. The queen consort's voice was carefully controlled when she finally spoke, but Charles could hear the underlying emotion. She asked why she had not been consulted about this decision, given that it directly affected her standing within the family. Camilla pointed out that she had been waiting for this recognition for years, and that awarding it to Catherine first sent a clear message about the king's priorities and preferences. Charles tried to reassure his wife that her own recognition would come in due time, but Camilla was not easily mollified. She reminded him of her loyal support during his darkest moments, including the difficult years following Diana's death and the public relations disasters that had threatened his reputation. She had stood by him when others had questioned his fitness to be king, and now she felt as though her devotion was being repaid with public humiliation. The conversation grew increasingly heated, as both Charles and Camilla struggled to maintain their composure. The king insisted that his decision was based purely on merit and timing, while the queen consort argued that protocol and hierarchy should have been respected. She felt that her position as his wife and queen consort entitled her to certain considerations that were being ignored in favor of popular opinion. Camilla also expressed concern about how this decision would be perceived. by the public and the media. She knew that royal watchers would interpret the king's choice as a clear signal about family dynamics and preferences. The narrative would inevitably focus on Charles choosing his daughter-in-law over his wife, potentially undermining Camilla's authority and standing as queen consort. The argument that followed was unlike any they had experienced in their marriage. Both Charles and Camilla said things they would later regret, with years of accumulated tensions and frustrations spilling into the open. Camilla accused Charles of being influenced by public opinion polls rather than standing by those who had supported him unconditionally. Charles defended his decision as being in the best interests of the monarchy, arguing that personal feelings could not override institutional needs. As the afternoon wore on, it became clear that this disagreement would not be easily resolved. Camilla felt betrayed and humiliated, while Charles remained convinced that he had made the right decision for the wrong reasons. The queen consort began to see the honor bestowed upon Catherine as symbolic of her own diminished importance within the royal hierarchy. The king attempted to find middle ground, suggesting that they could work together to ensure that Camilla's own recognition came quickly afterward. However, the damage had already been done. Camilla understood that being the second to receive an honor was fundamentally different from being the first, especially when that honor carried such symbolic weight within the royal system. By the time their heated discussion ended, both Charles and Camilla were emotionally exhausted. The queen consort felt that her years of service and sacrifice had been devalued, while the king remained convinced that his decision was necessary for the monarchy's future. They had reached an impasse that would color their relationship for months to come, and both knew that the public announcement of Catherine's honor would only intensify the private pain they were both feeling. The news of Catherine's honor broke 3 days later with the force of a royal earthquake. The palace's carefully crafted press release was issued at precisely 9 o'clock in the morning. Time to catch the peak breakfast television audience and ensure maximum coverage across all media platforms. Within minutes, the announcement was trending on social media platforms worldwide, with reactions ranging from celebration to controversy. The official statement praised Catherine's exceptional service to the crown and unwavering dedication to charitable causes, specifically highlighting her work in early childhood development and mental health awareness. The palace emphasized her grace during personal challenges and her role as a devoted mother and future queen. However, the statement's carefully diplomatic language could not mask the underlying drama that royal correspondents immediately began to dissect. British tabloids seized upon the story with characteristic enthusiasm, with headlines screaming across front pages throughout the country. "Kate gets royal boost," declared one newspaper, while another asked, "Why not Camilla first?" The coverage immediately focused on the unprecedented nature of the king's decision and the potential family tensions it might create. Royal experts were wheeled out to provide commentary on television morning shows, each offering their interpretation of what this decision meant for the monarchy's future. Social media exploded with opinions from royal watchers around the world. Catherine's supporters celebrated the recognition as long overdue, praising her natural warmth and authentic approach to royal duties. They pointed to her successful navigation of royal life, while maintaining her own identity and her obvious devotion to her children. Her recent health challenges had only increased public sympathy and admiration for her courage and resilience. However, not everyone was pleased with the king's decision. Camilla's supporters argued that the queen consort deserved recognition first. Given her position and years of service to the crown, they viewed the decision as a slight against someone who had worked tirelessly to earn public acceptance and had supported Charles through some of his most difficult periods. The online debate quickly became heated, with royal fans taking sides in what was essentially a family dispute played out in public. International media picked up the story with equal fascination, particularly in Commonwealth countries where the British royal family remained a subject of intense interest. American television networks devoted significant coverage to the announcement, with royal correspondents explaining the significance of the Order of the Garter to audiences unfamiliar with British honors. The story was framed as both a recognition of Catherine's popularity and a potential source of family drama. At Kensington Palace, Catherine found herself at the center of a media storm she had not anticipated. Her communications team worked frantically to manage interview requests and photo opportunities, while protecting her from the more intrusive aspects of the coverage. The Princess of Wales released a gracious statement expressing her humility and gratitude for the king's recognition, carefully avoiding any language that might be seen as triumphant or divisive. Catherine's response was measured and diplomatic, thanking the king for his confidence in her abilities, while acknowledging the honor's significance. She emphasized her commitment to serving the people of the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth, promising to live up to the expectations that came with such prestigious recognition. Her statement made no reference to Queen Camilla or the unusual circumstances surrounding the award. Prince William found himself in an awkward position, caught between celebrating his wife's achievement and maintaining family harmony. As the heir to the throne, he understood the importance of unity within the royal family, but he was also proud of Catherine's recognition. His public statements were carefully neutral, expressing pride in his wife while avoiding any comments that might inflame existing tensions. Meanwhile, at Clarence House, Queen Camilla maintained a dignified public silence that spoke volumes to those familiar with royal protocol. She continued with her scheduled engagements, including a visit to a women's shelter and an evening reception for literacy campaigners. However, royal observers noted a certain tension in her demeanor and a lack of the usual warmth in her interactions with the media. Behind the scenes, Camilla's staff worked to manage the situation and protect their principal from the worst of the media speculation. They issued a brief statement expressing the Queen Consort's pleasure at Catherine's recognition, but the language was noticeably formal and lacked the enthusiasm typically seen in royal family congratulations. The statement's brevity and tone only fueled further speculation about family tensions. The king found himself facing criticism from unexpected quarters as the story developed throughout the day. Some royal commentators questioned his timing and judgment, suggesting that he should have consulted more widely before making such a significant decision. Others praised his willingness to recognize merit regardless of traditional hierarchies, viewing the decision as evidence of a modernizing monarchy willing to adapt to contemporary values. Charles attempted to manage the fallout by scheduling additional engagements that would showcase family unity. However, his efforts were complicated by Camilla's obvious displeasure and the media's determination to find evidence of the rift that everyone suspected existed. Palace staff worked overtime to coordinate schedules and ensure that the king and queen consort appeared together at upcoming events, hoping to demonstrate solidarity despite the underlying tensions. The controversy reached beyond the immediate royal family to affect other members of the extended royal network. Princess Anne, known for her direct approach to royal duties, was reportedly asked for her opinion on the matter, but declined to comment publicly. The Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh maintained diplomatic silence, while other working royals found themselves fielding questions about the decision during their own engagements au royal. Historians weighed in with analysis of previous instances where similar honors had caused family tensions. They pointed to historical precedents where monarchs had made controversial decisions about recognition and titles, often with long-lasting consequences for family relationships. The Order of the Garter had been the subject of political and personal disputes before, but rarely had such a decision been made in such a public and scrutinized environment. As the day progressed, it became clear that this story would not fade quickly from public attention. The combination of royal drama, family tensions, and questions about modernizing traditions created a perfect storm of media interest. News producers recognized that audiences were fascinated by the human elements of the story, the hurt feelings, the family dynamics, and the question of who deserved recognition first. By evening, the palace's communication strategy had shifted from damage control to longer-term reputation management. They began planning a series of carefully choreographed appearances designed to demonstrate family unity while allowing each principal to maintain their dignity. However, everyone involved understood that the relationships and dynamics within the royal family had been fundamentally altered by the king's decision and its public reception. The international reaction continued to build throughout the day, with commentators in different countries offering varying perspectives on the controversy. Some viewed it as evidence of the monarchy's continued relevance and ability to generate public interest, while others saw it as unnecessary drama that distracted from more serious issues facing the institution. The debate reflected broader questions about the role of monarchy in modern society and the balance between tradition and progress. The first major test of the family's unity came just 5 days after the announcement, when all senior royals were scheduled to attend the state opening of Parliament. This ancient ceremony required the entire family to appear together in their finest regalia, presenting a picture of harmony and tradition to the nation. However, behind the scenes, the tension was palpable, as everyone prepared for what would inevitably become a media spectacle focused on royal body language and interactions. Camilla's preparation for the event was particularly challenging. As queen consort, she was required to wear the magnificent George IV state diadem and accompany Charles in the Diamond Jubilee state coach. The irony was not lost on her that she would be displaying the ultimate symbols of royal authority while feeling undermined by her husband's recent decision. Her dresser noticed that the queen consort was unusually quiet during the lengthy preparation process, lacking her typical engagement with the ceremonial details. Catherine, meanwhile, faced her own pressures as she prepared for her first major royal appearance since receiving the Order of the Garter. She chose a conservative royal blue ensemble with pearl jewelry, deliberately selecting pieces that would not overshadow the queen consort while still maintaining her own elegant style. Her team had briefed her extensively on media expectations and the importance of appearing gracious and humble, despite the recent honor. The journey to Westminster was conducted in traditional style, with multiple coaches carrying various members of the royal family. The crowds lining the route were larger than usual, drawn by curiosity about the family dynamics as much as by the ceremonial splendor. Royal watchers scrutinized every detail, from seating arrangements in the coaches to facial expressions visible through the windows. Inside the Diamond Jubilee state coach, Charles and Camilla maintained polite conversation, but their usual easy companionship was notably absent. The king attempted to discuss the day's schedule and upcoming engagements, but Camilla's responses were minimal and formal. The 30-minute journey felt much longer than usual, with both royals acutely aware that their every gesture was being photographed and analyzed. Catherine and William traveled in a separate carriage, maintaining their usual warm dynamic while being conscious of the additional scrutiny their presence would attract. William had coached Catherine on managing the media attention, reminding her that her reaction to the ongoing controversy would be as important as her original response to the honor. They discussed how to interact naturally with Queen Camilla, without appearing either triumphant or apologetic. Upon arrival at Westminster, the family gathered in the traditional waiting area before processing into the House of Lords. This private moment, away from cameras, provided the first real test of how they would interact face-to-face since the announcement. Charles attempted to maintain normalcy by discussing the ceremony's details with various family members, but everyone present could feel the underlying tension. The moment everyone had been waiting for came when Catherine and Camilla found themselves standing near each other while waiting for the procession to begin. Catherine approached the queen consort with a warm smile, expressing gratitude for her recent congratulatory message and attempting to engage in normal conversation about upcoming engagements. Camilla responded politely but with a coolness that was noticeable to those watching closely. Their brief exchange was carefully observed by other family members, palace staff and security personnel who understood the significance of every word and gesture. Catherine's attempt to maintain warmth and respect was genuine, but Camilla's response made it clear that she remained hurt by recent events. The conversation lasted only a few minutes before protocol required them to take their designated positions for the procession. The ceremony itself proceeded with its usual pomp and grandeur, but royal correspondents noted subtle differences in the family's interactions. During the Queen's speech, television cameras captured moments when family members who usually exchanged knowing glances or subtle smiles maintained more formal composure. The absence of these small humanizing moments was as telling as any public statement about the ongoing tensions. Camilla's performance during the ceremony was flawless from a protocol standpoint, but those familiar with her usual demeanor noticed a certain stiffness in her bearing. She fulfilled every requirement of her role as queen consort with precision, but lacked the natural warmth that had become her trademark in recent years. Her interaction with Charles was correct but noticeably formal, even by royal standards. Catherine navigated the ceremony with particular grace, seeming to understand that her every move was being interpreted as evidence of either humility or arrogance. She was careful to show appropriate deference to more senior family members while maintaining her own dignity. Her curtsy to the king and queen consort was perfectly executed and held just long enough to demonstrate proper respect, without appearing obsequious. The post-ceremony reception provided another opportunity for family interactions to be scrutinized. Traditional protocol required various combinations of royals to mingle with dignitaries and guests, creating natural opportunities for conversation and interaction. However, observers noted that Catherine and Camilla were not seen engaging in extended conversation. Though both fulfilled their individual duties with professional competence, Prince William found himself in an increasingly difficult position as the day progressed. As the heir to the throne, he needed to maintain good relationships with all family members while supporting his wife through this challenging period. His conversations with his father were brief and focused on official business, while his interactions with Camilla were cordial but notably less warm than usual. The king himself seemed burdened by the tension his decision had created. While he maintained his royal composure throughout the ceremony, those close to him noticed signs of stress and fatigue that suggested he was feeling the weight of family discord. His speeches and interactions with dignitaries were flawless, but lacked the enthusiasm he typically brought to such occasions. By the end of the day, it was clear that the family's public appearances would require careful choreography for the foreseeable future. The media coverage focused heavily on analyzing every interaction, with royal correspondents offering detailed commentary on body language, seating arrangements, and conversation patterns. The scrutiny was intense enough that palace staff began planning future events, with even greater attention to managing family dynamics. The evening's private debrief among senior palace staff was somber as they assessed the day's events and their implications for future royal appearances. While no major protocol breaches had occurred, the underlying tension was obvious to anyone familiar with normal royal family dynamics. The challenge would be maintaining the facade of unity while allowing time for genuine healing of relationships. Charles retired to his private quarters that evening with a heavy heart, knowing that his decision had created a situation that would require careful management for months to come. He remained convinced that honoring Catherine was the right choice, but the personal cost was becoming increasingly apparent. The king faced the difficult realization that doing what he believed was best for the monarchy had potentially damaged some of his most important personal relationships. The day had demonstrated that while the royal family could maintain their professional obligations, despite personal tensions, the strain was visible to those who knew how to look for it. The question remained whether time would heal the wounds created by the king's controversial decision, or whether this moment would mark a permanent shift in family dynamics that would affect the monarchy for years to come. 3 weeks after the state opening of Parliament, an unexpected opportunity for reconciliation emerged when Princess Charlotte fell seriously ill with pneumonia. The 8-year-old princess was rushed to a private hospital in London during the night, sending shockwaves through the family and temporarily pushing aside the ongoing tensions over Catherine's honor. Medical emergencies had a way of putting royal disputes into perspective, and this crisis would test whether family bonds could overcome recent hurts. Catherine barely left her daughter's bedside during the first 48 hours of Charlotte's hospitalization. William took time off from his royal duties to support his wife and be present for their daughter, while George and Louis were cared for by their grandmother, Carol Middleton. The family's world had suddenly narrowed to the confines of a hospital room, where royal protocols mattered far less than parental love and concern. News of Charlotte's illness was kept strictly private initially, with only immediate family members informed of the situation. However, the absence of Catherine and William from scheduled engagements began to raise questions among royal correspondents. Palace officials released a brief statement citing a family matter requiring their attention, which only intensified speculation about what might be happening behind closed doors. The king learned of his granddaughter's condition through a late-night phone call from William. Despite the recent family tensions, Charles immediately canceled his morning engagements and drove to the hospital to be with his son and daughter-in-law. When he arrived at the private wing where Charlotte was being treated, he found Catherine exhausted and tearful. maintaining a vigil by her daughter's bedside that spoke to every parent's worst nightmare. Charles's immediate response was that of a concerned grandfather rather than a king dealing with family discord. He embraced Catherine warmly, offering comfort and support without any reference to their recent difficulties. In that moment, the Order of the Garter controversy seemed insignificant compared to the health of his beloved granddaughter. The king's genuine emotion and care reminded Catherine of why she had always respected him, despite recent complications. When Camilla learned of Charlotte's hospitalization, her response was immediate and heartfelt. Despite her ongoing hurt over the honor situation, she could not ignore the distress of a child she genuinely loved. The Queen Consort had developed a special relationship with all three of William and Catherine's children, and Charlotte's illness touched her deeply. She immediately rearranged her schedule to visit the hospital, bringing with her Charlotte's favorite books and a small stuffed animal. The scene that unfolded in Charlotte's hospital room was both touching and significant for family dynamics. Camilla approached Catherine with genuine concern, asking about Charlotte's condition and offering whatever support might be needed. The Queen Consort's natural maternal instincts overrode any personal grievances, and for the first time since the announcement, the two women interacted with authentic warmth rather than polite formality. Catherine was deeply moved by Camilla's gesture and obvious concern for Charlotte. Seeing the Queen Consort reading stories to her sick daughter, Catherine was reminded of Camilla's genuine love for the family, rather than focusing on recent disappointments. The crisis provided perspective that had been missing during the previous weeks of tension and media speculation. Charlotte herself, despite feeling unwell, was delighted to see both her grandfather and step-grandmother. Children have a remarkable ability to sense adult tensions, and Charlotte had been confused by the recent stiffness she had observed during family gatherings. However, in the hospital room, surrounded by people who clearly loved her, she experienced the warmth and unity that had characterized her family relationships before the recent controversy. As Charlotte's condition gradually improved over the following days, the extended hospital vigil provided unexpected opportunities for family conversations that might not have occurred otherwise. Charles and William found themselves talking more openly than they had in weeks, discussing not just Charlotte's recovery, but also the broader challenges facing the family. The king was able to explain his reasoning for honoring Catherine, while acknowledging the pain his decision had caused. Camilla and Catherine also had several meaningful conversations. During the long hours of waiting for medical updates, Catherine expressed genuine remorse for any hurt the honor had caused, while Camilla began to articulate her feelings of being overlooked and undervalued. Both women discovered that they shared common concerns about family unity and the welfare of the children, providing a foundation for rebuilding their relationship. The media eventually learned of Charlotte's hospitalization, but the coverage was respectful and sympathetic, focusing on wishes for the young princess's recovery rather than family drama. Public sympathy for Catherine as a worried mother helped shift the narrative away from controversy toward genuine human concern. The royal family's handling of the medical crisis earned praise for maintaining privacy while keeping the public appropriately informed. When Charlotte was finally well enough to return home, after a week in hospital, the family dynamics had shifted significantly. The shared experience of worry and relief had reminded everyone of what truly mattered, creating space for genuine reconciliation to begin. Charles felt particularly moved by how his family had come together during the crisis, seeing it as evidence that their bonds were stronger than any temporary disagreements. The king used Charlotte's recovery as an opportunity to address the family tensions more directly. He arranged a private dinner at Windsor Castle for the immediate family, including Catherine's parents, where he could speak openly about his decision regarding the Order of the Garter. Charles acknowledged that he could have handled the situation more sensitively, while maintaining his conviction that Catherine deserved the recognition. During this family dinner, Camilla was able to express her feelings more completely than she had during their initial heated exchange. She spoke about her years of working to earn public acceptance and her disappointment at being passed over for an honor she had long anticipated. However, she also acknowledged her deep affection for Catherine and her pride in the younger woman's accomplishments. Catherine used the opportunity to publicly thank Camilla for her support during Charlotte's illness and to express her hope that they could move forward together. She proposed that they collaborate on some joint engagements that would demonstrate family unity, while allowing both women to pursue their individual charitable interests. The suggestion was welcomed by both Charles and Camilla as a positive step toward healing. The evening concluded with the family feeling more unified than they had since before the announcement. While the underlying issues had not been completely resolved, the foundation for repair had been established. Charlotte's illness had served as a powerful reminder that family relationships were more important than royal honors or public perception. William played a crucial role in facilitating these conversations, helping to bridge differences between family members while protecting his wife and children from ongoing stress. His position as heir to the throne gave him unique authority to encourage reconciliation, while ensuring that everyone felt heard and respected. As the family left Windsor Castle that evening, there was a sense that a corner had been turned in their relationships. The Order of the Garter controversy had not been forgotten, but it had been placed in proper perspective. The upcoming investiture ceremony would still require careful management, but the family now had a foundation of renewed trust and communication to build upon. The experience had taught everyone involved valuable lessons about the importance of family communication and the dangers of allowing royal protocol to overshadow personal relationships. Charles, in particular, resolved to be more consultative in future decisions that might affect family dynamics, while Camilla gained a deeper appreciation for Catherine's genuine character and intentions. 6 months after the initial announcement, the day of Catherine's investiture as a lady companion of the Order of the Garter arrived with all the pageantry and tradition that such ceremonies demanded. St. George's Chapel at Windsor Castle had been prepared according to centuries-old protocols, with banners representing each member of the order hanging majestically from the ancient stone walls. The morning was bright and clear, as if nature itself was blessing this moment of royal history. The family tensions that had dominated headlines for months had evolved into something more complex and mature. While not all wounds had completely healed, the shared experience of Charlotte's illness had created a foundation of mutual respect and understanding that allowed everyone to approach this day with dignity and genuine goodwill. The investiture would mark not just Catherine's formal recognition, but also the family's ability to overcome adversity and present a united front. Catherine's preparation for the ceremony had been meticulous, involving weeks of rehearsals and careful attention to every detail of the ancient ritual. She would be wearing the traditional blue velvet mantle and hat of the order, symbols that connected her to centuries of distinguished service to the crown. The weight of history and expectation was immense, but Catherine felt ready to accept both the honor and the responsibilities that came with it. Queen Camilla had surprised many by personally overseeing some of the ceremonial arrangements, demonstrating her commitment to ensuring that Catherine's day would be perfect. This gesture of support had not gone unnoticed by either Catherine or the king, who saw it as evidence of Camilla's generous spirit and dedication to family harmony. The queen consort had chosen to wear a complementary shade of blue for the ceremony, subtly showing solidarity with the woman being honored. King Charles himself felt a mixture of pride and relief as he prepared to conduct the investiture. His controversial decision had ultimately brought his family closer together, though not without significant cost along the way. He had learned valuable lessons about consultation and communication that would inform his future decisions as monarch. Most importantly, he remained convinced that recognizing Catherine's service had been the right choice for both personal and institutional reasons. The ceremony began with the traditional procession of the knights and ladies' companion, their magnificent robes creating a river of blue velvet flowing through the chapel. Hundreds of guests, including foreign dignitaries, government officials, and representatives from Catherine's charities, filled every seat. The occasion represented not just a personal honor for Catherine, but a celebration of public service and dedication that resonated far beyond the royal family. Prince William walked proudly beside his wife as they processed into the chapel, their children George, Charlotte, and Louis watching from the front row with their great-grandmother's dignified bearing already evident in their young faces. Charlotte, now fully recovered from her illness, wore a special dress that Camilla had helped her choose, symbolizing the renewed bonds within the family. The ancient words of the investiture ceremony echoed through the chapel as Charles formally welcomed Catherine into the most noble order. The ritual had been performed countless times over nearly 7 centuries, connecting Catherine to a tradition that included some of the most distinguished figures in British history. As she knelt before the king to receive her insignia, the weight of that history and her own responsibility to honor it was palpable. Camilla watched the ceremony with genuine emotion, having worked through her initial disappointment to find pride in Catherine's achievement. The queen consort had come to understand that the monarchy was large enough for multiple sources of strength, and that Catherine's recognition enhanced, rather than diminished, the institution they all served. Her gracious acceptance of the situation had actually increased public respect for her own dignity and character. The moment when Charles placed the order's collar around Catherine's shoulders was particularly poignant, representing not just royal recognition, but also the healing of family relationships that had been strained by his decision. Father-in-law and daughter-in-law exchanged a look of mutual respect and affection that spoke to their genuine bond beyond the complications of recent months. Following the ceremony, the traditional lunch provided opportunities for family members to interact more casually with guests and each other. Catherine made a point of spending time with each family member, thanking them for their support and acknowledging the challenges the situation had created. Her graciousness and victory was noted by many present, and helped cement her reputation for diplomatic skill and emotional intelligence. Camilla's speech during the lunch was particularly memorable, as she spoke eloquently about Catherine's dedication to charitable causes and her natural grace under pressure. The queen consort's words carried extra weight because everyone present understood the personal growth and generosity they represented. Her ability to celebrate Catherine's achievement while maintaining her own dignity impressed even her critics. The media coverage of the investiture was overwhelmingly positive, focusing on the ceremony's beauty and significance rather than on family drama. Royal correspondents noted the obvious warmth between family members and the successful resolution of what had initially appeared to be a serious rift. The narrative had evolved from controversy to reconciliation, providing a satisfying conclusion to months of speculation. In her speech accepting the honor, Catherine struck the perfect tone of humility and determination. She acknowledged the privilege of joining such a distinguished order, while emphasizing her commitment to using the platform it provided to advance causes close to her heart. Her words reflected months of careful thought about how to balance personal honor with public service. The ceremony's conclusion found the family posing for official photographs that would document this historic day. The images captured not just formal royal portraits but genuine moments of family affection and pride. Charles and Camilla stood together with obvious unity, while William and Catherine radiated happiness and accomplishment. The children provided natural moments of joy that humanized the grand occasion. As evening fell and the day's festivities concluded, the family gathered privately at Windsor Castle for a more intimate celebration. This dinner, unlike the formal ceremony, allowed for personal reflections and acknowledgments of how far they had all traveled since the original announcement 6 months earlier. Stories were shared, toasts were made, and relationships that had been tested were now demonstrably stronger. King Charles used the private dinner to formally announce that Queen Camilla would receive the Order of the Garter at the next investiture ceremony, scheduled for the following year. This decision, made in consultation with his family and advisors, provided appropriate recognition for Camilla's service, while allowing sufficient time for Catherine's honor to be properly celebrated. The announcement was greeted with genuine enthusiasm from all present. The evening concluded with a sense that the royal family had not just survived a significant challenge but had grown stronger through the experience. The lessons learned about communication, consultation, and family dynamics would serve them well in future situations. Most importantly, the institution of the monarchy had demonstrated its ability to adapt and evolve while maintaining its essential dignity and purpose. As the family members departed Windsor Castle that night, each carried different reflections on the day's significance. Catherine felt the weight of new responsibilities alongside the satisfaction of recognition earned through dedicated service. Camilla experienced the peace that comes from choosing grace over resentment and finding strength in supporting others' success. Charles felt validated in his decision, While humbled by the importance of considering all perspectives before acting, the Order of the Garter controversy that had once threatened to divide the royal family had ultimately become a story of growth, reconciliation, and the enduring power of family bonds to overcome temporary disagreements. The monarchy emerged stronger, more united, and better prepared for future challenges, having learned that even kings must balance institutional needs with personal relationships, and that the greatest honors come not just from recognition received but from the grace shown in giving recognition to others.